always like to meet the commissioners, the mayor, and special kudos to Ellen, who was part of this group until a few weeks ago. Many of you have heard me many times before. First, let me start by saying the last time I was here was actually the commission and the mayor was recognizing the work I did on behalf of Juno Beach in my 8 years in the legislature, and I certainly appreciate that. I'm not a person really that runs around seeking credit or honor, but 2 or 3 of the citizens did give me special recognition, and I have my wife and children there. A little bit of background, I don't want to go too far into background. I grew up in a military family. My dad was a Marine for 27 years. We moved around. He retired in Orlando, Florida in the late 50s. I went to high school and then college at Florida State. I then started a 20-year Navy career, serving a year in Vietnam. After that, I went to the Harvard Business School, got an MBA, and I've been a money manager since 1972, working both in Philadelphia and locally. I live right up the road in Jupiter with my wife and my 14-year-old twins, Mason and Reagan. I think tonight we'll have a lot of time to explain why Patrick Murphy has not been an effective congressman and why the Democratic Party has let us down. But let me for a second just tell you about things that we did when we were in the legislature, because it's my belief you cannot run a campaign on what the other guy didn't do. It's what you're going to do and what you did. And let me talk about 3 things that are very important. The first is my battle for 8 years for tax reform called portability. My friend Dan back there mentioned on the way in that maybe I'm the only guy in the state that understands what it means. But those of you that want to move to the House understand. Thank you.
Okay, I know it's very brief, but we have a lot of candidates to get in here. So our next opening statement will be 2 minutes from Nick Wilkerson.
Oh, Wilkerson, thank you.
I'm going to try.
That's fantastic. Thank you all again for allowing all of us the opportunity tonight to speak before you and introduce ourselves. My name is Nick Wilkerson. I'm a resident of Palm Beach Gardens, just down the street. I'm a former police officer. I'm a small business owner currently. I have 2 amazing young children and an incredible wife, and I have to make sure I say incredible, otherwise that will come back to bite me. But she is. I am passionate about doing much more than throwing out rhetoric and empty promises in front of groups, in front of you all. I'm passionate because I believe that I have the plan that will give us the how we can accomplish what we're promising. I, just like you, have been grown to be upset and frustrated with a lot of the emptiness that comes from both sides of the aisle. A lot of the promises that never follow through on. And never do we find ourselves in a position where someone can explain to us exactly how they're going to achieve what they promise that they're going to do for us when they run for office and once in office. It's very clear that they find themselves in a position where special interest and PACs and large donors are very successful in buying candidates and buying the establishments away from our needs and our wants and needs in our society. I'm very excited about what I do bring to the table, my plan to hold everybody accountable in Washington. My plan literally follows the dollar through the system. It explains who and why they're touching our money, where it goes, and it actually holds them accountable to how effective they are with our money. So I'm very excited about what I can actually achieve in Washington, and I can bring much more to the table than just rhetoric and emptiness.
Thank you. Our next opening statement from Brian Lara.
Hi, thank you for coming here today. My name is Brian Lara. I've never run for public office before. I studied engineering at Columbia University, spent 20 years in the private sector, first as developer, then as director of IT and risk manager. 2 years ago, we had an economy that was poor. We have Congress that is passing bills day and the night without reading them, and we had a president blaming the other guy. And I was working and trusted the Republican Party to get us out of this mess, but they couldn't. We found ourselves now choosing a new Congress, and I find that I had to run, not because I wanted to, but because I had to. We have an establishment in Washington that does not care about what listens to the people, and we need to get citizens to come into office to listen to citizens and not just the establishment. Right now, we have over 24 million Americans either unemployed or out of the labor force. African Americans have the lowest level of employment And yet in this environment, instead of siding with American citizens, siding with the working class, we find that Congress is trying to pass an amnesty bill to double the number of foreign workers and also legalize millions more. I think the Republican Party is not using what they have. It's a bad environment and also a Democratic Party that really isn't doing the right thing for the people. And we should use that to our advantage to expand the voter base. So my name is Brian Lara. Thank you for coming here today.
Thank you. Our next opening statement from Alan Schlesinger.
Thank you, Donna, and the committee for putting this together. I really appreciate it, and I know everyone up here does. Mr. Mayor, Mr. Former Mayor, Ellen, and Mr. Councilman. I guess you have a quorum here today, so that's pretty good. So I don't know if we're going to transact any business, but I have to tell you, maybe the most important business we're going to transact here tonight is pick a candidate that hopefully will prevail in November and bring back this district to the Republican column and hopefully bring back this country. I want you all to be optimistic because I believe that the future of the United States is in our hands. I look at 2014 just as 2010, which was when the country said enough is enough and we're going to move this country forward. Unfortunately, we did have a setback in 2012, but I don't think that anyone should pay attention to that because I think right now, everyone in this country, including the people in this room, have had a taste of socialism and they don't like it very much. And it's kind of been shoved down our throats. And I say, they shoved it down our throats in 2009 with Obamacare. I say that we stick it up in a ballot box come November. We have the opportunity to turn this country around. Make no mistake about it. Everyone in this room is going to play a key role in November in changing the course of this country. You know, I used to say that in my past I was a mayor and a legislator, and I used to argue with my Democratic friends over policy. This is the first time in my career that we're arguing over what form of government we're going to proceed with. That's how serious things have become in this country. You're going to look at the candidates here tonight, and I want you to put one thing in mind. I want you to think, who is going to take this banner, run with it, and take out Murphy in November? Because everything else doesn't matter. Because if when all is said and done, if we still have Murphy as congressman, we have failed. Thank you.
Okay, our next opening statement will be from Calvin Turnquist.
Thank you. Thank you for hosting this forum tonight so you can determine which candidate of us is best to defeat Patrick Murphy in the November 2014 elections. But first of all, with all due respect, I'd like to recognize St. Lucie County REC Chairman Bill Patterson. Thank you, Bill, for coming down. I am a legal immigrant from the Bahamas. I founded that beacon of light that ensures that we have the right to pursue prosperity and pursue happiness here in America. I came here 25 years ago to obtain an education and graduated from the University of Miami with a degree in chemistry. I met my wife there, and 23 years later, she still tolerates me. We celebrated our anniversary this February 28th, and it was one of the proudest moments of my life because she gave me the full go-ahead to put our lives on hold so that we can fight for a better future. And I see America in the future having a bright and better and prosperous future. I see a light. And I don't see doom and gloom. I see a future that is bright for all of us. And to determine that, we have to choose which candidate of all of us that would be the best suited to defeat Patrick Murphy in November 2014. A little bit about my history. I graduated from the University of Miami with a degree in chemistry. And I served on Tuquesta Council for 3 terms, one as the vice mayor. I decided to run for office because I see that I can provide the best hope for this country, in this district, and to present us with a brighter future. And this is why I'm here tonight. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And our final opening statement will be from Ilya Katz. No, we're not there yet. We're at the opening statements. Ilya Katz.
Good evening. I hope you will understand my not exactly Alabama accent. I'm a political refugee from Russia, and I came to this country 38 years ago. As advice godfather keep, my goodness, it's made in China. So, as a said Godfather from the movie, keep your friend close and enemy even closer. So I came to town hall now recently under title Congressman Patrick Murphy, Job Creator. I have a sense of humor, and I was surprised and amused. Congressman saying less government, less taxes. I asked, maybe he became Republican. So somebody recognized me and decided to provoke me. He asked, Mr. Katz, how you like Congressman Murphy? And I answered, forgive me, lady, I said, ordinary S-word. Try to pretend that he's an important fertilizer. I will tell you something. Mr. Murphy, he's a very dynamic person, and he will do anything and everything just to reach and stay in the power. Therefore, he doing right things. He go to people and fool them with wrong ideas. If I will have a chance, I will give you my word. Because I was a professor for the American University, satirical writer, sharpshooter, and I also was a freedom fighter, I will make suffer Mr. Murphy with diarrhea together with constipation.
Okay, thank you. Okay, now do we have any questions in the audience? Anyone want their cards collected? This is the time, because we're going to go into that portion of the forum now. So just raise your hand. And we'll do this a couple of times during this portion of it, so I'll have a chance. Okay, now written questions, as I will now be asked of the candidates, and as I mentioned, we're going to ask them to limit their answers to 1 minute each. I know it's brief, but in order to get through as many questions as possible, that's what we have to do. Okay, first question asked. If elected as District 18 House Representative, how will you stand up for your principles, and what is the best for your district, or not to be coerced to vote a certain way? I guess they're saying you stand up for what, you won't be coerced to vote a certain way, but you will vote according to what you think is best. And we'll start with Carl Domino.
Well, I think the best way to say what you're going to do is show what you've done. Marco Rubio was Speaker of the House, a good friend of mine. I endorsed him. Had a tax proposal that would have raised your sales tax by double. Every Democrat voted against it. Every Republican voted against it, with one exception. I voted against it. It was later thrown off the ballot, replaced with portability. So I do what's best for my constituents, and I always have, and I always will.
Okay, next one, Ilya Katz.
Generally, I believe that I am a representative anti-government coalition under name We Are the People. First of all, I am a conservative, and the second, I am a Republican. Therefore, I will fight for liberty, because liberty, it is the essence of America. And if we will lose liberty, we will lose America. Therefore, anything, taxes, government involvement, Obamacare, Obamacare, supposed to be repealed and replaced. I will do my best, and I'm perfectly prepared for this.
Okay, our next answer will be from Brian Lara. What I'm doing is I'm starting out doing them in alphabetical order, and then we're just going to alternate around and rotate, so not necessarily in the order that they're up here. Although it might be. Okay.
It's the very reason why I am running for office. And that is that our representatives are not representing the people. They're representing lobbyists. The question is, what will prevent me from doing exactly the same thing? That's exactly the reason why I'm running. It's in my nature not to go for the elephant or the donkeys, but actually to do what's best for the people. Is it always been popular with the party leadership? Probably not. but it's the right thing to do.
Okay, Alan Schlesinger.
Well, in the past, my bipartisanship and my work for my district has cost me higher office several times because I believe that a representative represents the people first and foremost, and everything else is secondary. In my caucus, in the legislature, I used to get up and I used to say, you know, are we trying to out Democrat the Democrats? It wasn't a very popular thing, but a lot of times we give up what we were sent up there for because of whatever seems to be working at the time, whether it's lobbying, whether it's certain political beliefs that we can get a majority or retain a majority because of what we're going to say or do. I don't believe in any of that. I think when you take the oath of office, you should take it seriously and you work for the people all the time. As a mayor, my door was always open. I used to let people come in off the street and meet with me. I got some of my best ideas from people, just ordinary citizens, every day. And that's how I solve people's problems. And that's what I'm going to do for you. I'm going to be your problem solver.
Okay, Calvin Turnquist.
This is one of the reasons why I believe that the government closest to the people serve the people the best. And I think that our elected officials, whether they're going to move higher into higher office, we should first start at the local level, because then we understand what makes our district and our community tick, and we have our fingers on the pulse of our community. I think for us to really impact our community and our district, we must be willing to roll our sleeves up, get our hands to the dirt, and work with our community and for our community. And I've done this in Tequesta, and I will continue to do this as I move up into Congress. It's not good enough to just stand in Congress and have congressional hearings and forums and not come back down to our district and do what is right and make a tangible impact on our community. I've done this in Tequesta, and I will continue to do this. So let's get back to basics and work in our community for our community. Thank you.
Okay, and Nick Wilkerson.
I agree that someone's past is very relevant to who they are today, but I think it's extremely important to address a nation right now desperately seeking answers and solutions moving forward. I think it's very important to make sure that these solutions are good for everybody, and good for the country, good for the community. We're talking about principles here, and to be straightforward with you, that is truly why I'm running. It's only about principles for me. As long as I hold on to them, I know that I'm doing the right thing. And if I ever stray from those principles, the principles of holding people accountable, holding everyone accountable, offering forward-thinking solutions and ideas, and doing the best for everybody. It doesn't matter if it's a D or an R in front of the name. It doesn't matter. It's about what's best for the people. The best ideas out there. Those are my principles, and that's where I stand. As long as I hold on to them, I know I'm doing the right thing.
Okay, thank you. Now we're going to get into the specifics on these questions. And this questioner wants to know, to discuss your plan for support of our military on a local and federal level. We'll start with Ilya Katz.
I'm sorry. Sorry. Well, I'm so thrilled that I'm a first. Well, I believe that today our military absolutely inadequate, because wars of the future will be war with electromagnetic impulse. And we behind Russia, behind China, and Russia sold these impulses which can destroy all our power grid immediately in second to Iran and to North Korea. This is dangerous. So, and the second, we have to think about internet war, because easy. A small little hoodlum stole 40 million files from our stores. Imagine what can do a serious states which will decide to war with us. Therefore, we have to very seriously think how rearm our country to defend our country.
Thank you. Next will be Brian Lara.
Hi. First of all, I would just say thank you to all the military, both the ones current and in the past. We we would not be here today, any of us, I definitely would not be here, had our military men not protected our country and almost the whole world. To that effect, it's not like we have a lot more friends out there now. Most of the world still hates us, in part because of our freedom, and in part because we are democracy. Historically, if you think about it, most of the history is all based about totalitarianism. Strong leaders who basically must control the entire populace. It happened in Cuba when my parents were born, and they lost their freedom. We must have a strong military, and we must have one that is not only good for today, but also for the future. Also, we have soldiers right now who are coming home from wars. No one wants wars. But these men and women, they are fighting for our freedom. They come here and they're given no benefits for a year. To some degree, we have to streamline that. We know they're coming in, we know they're injured, we have to help them to come here.
Thank you. Next we'll hear from Alan Schlesinger.
Going back to pre-World War II levels of the military is simply dangerous. Putin's provocative movement into the Crimea and threatening the Ukraine is symptomatic of what is going to be before us in the future. I don't know about you, but I'm simply frightened by this administration that believes that words can conquer all and is basically the opposite of President Reagan's peace through strength. Basically, his idea is strength through rhetoric, and we can see how the world respects that, unfortunately. I believe that we need a very strong military, and we have to put our money where our mouth is. And you know, it would be one thing if he was going to try to handle the deficit. I'm talking about the president, of course. His budget for 2015 has a large increase, yet a big reduction in the military. So you put two and two together, he's just moving us towards this socialist state, and he believes that we're all going to go along with it. And that's why we have to stick together for a new beginning.
Okay, thank you. Calvin Turnquist.
I think that we should have the strongest military in the world. And I also think that we should protect our veterans and their benefits. For instance, the Ryan budget. What it did was it cut benefits from our veterans, but they have left Congress intact. If I was in Congress, based on that alone, I would have voted against the Ryan budget, even though I'm a Republican, because it took away benefits from those who served this country and those that gave us the right and protection to stand up here today and say that we're going to run for Congress to represent our district and our country. So I would fight to protect our veterans' benefits at all costs, and if there's anything in any budget that cuts benefits from our veterans, I will vote against it, because it's just not right to take away things from people who have served, sacrificed, died, so that we can have the freedoms that we have today. Thank you.
And Nick Wilkerson.
Yeah, Obama's budget suggestion, really, because he cannot actually push his own budget legally through the system. It's a congressional obligation. His budget's not going to fly, and especially the suggestions of cutting pre-World War II levels, which are scary. I agree with Alan on that. That's something that just can never happen. We need someone in Washington who's going to fight that head on in front of every camera and every microphone and explain to America why it's important that we don't dip to such levels. It's one thing to fight back and forth over a room like this in Washington and discuss numbers and so forth. It's another to stand in front of the camera and speak directly to the American public and explain exactly why it's important that we don't do and have such dramatic cuts. We need to explain the relevance and importance of having the strongest, to maintain the strongest and best military in this world.
Well, thank you. And finally, the answer from Carl Domino.
Well, first of all, thanks for asking that question. It's so unique politics these days that of all the candidates, both on the R and D side, I'm the only one that's ever served. As I said, I served 20 years. I'm the only one that knows what it is to be in a combat zone. Patrick Murphy doesn't. Because if he did, he would not have voted to cut pensions of military retirees last fall. And Barack Obama doesn't. Because the idea of only having a fighting force that would fight in one theater, that would have been a great idea on December of 1941. We could have either fought Japan or Germany, but not both. And while we need new technologies to expand our forces, you need boots on the ground. You need them for reconnaissance. You need them to hold territory that you've taken. These people not only do not understand the military, they've never served in the military, and they have no great appreciation of the military. But thank you for asking the question. It's the first question that should have been asked, because that's what we're all about.
Thank you. Okay, the next questioner wants to know, at this point, what is the best way to handle Obamacare? Fix it or full repeal, and then what? And we'll start with Brian Lara.
Obamacare cannot be fixed. Okay, this is a monstrosity that was passed literally the night before Christmas by the Senate without even reading it. Nobody even knows who actually wrote it. It's probably a combination of many lobbyists. It cannot be fixed, and it's actually, the president right now is trying to give it life by not implementing it, which is in his own right, illegal. The way to fix healthcare is to increase competition. Like everything else that we have here, is the markets that work. We need to expand insurance policies across state lines and allow competition, actual competition between insurers. So people can choose their own plans, which whatever policies they need and desire. And we'll have insurers competing for those customers. We have a lot of uninsured in this country, but the same people who are uninsured choose to buy shoes or cell phones or cable TV over their insurance policies. If that's the case, then they're making a decision, which is perfectly fine, but it is a personal decision that they're making to not buy insurance. It should not be forced upon anyone. So the solution to healthcare is to increase competition by allowing the private markets to work across state lines.
Thank you. Alan Schlesinger. The first thing you have to understand is that Obamacare has nothing to do with health care. All it is a redistribution of income for the United States. Obama was not happy with the way things have been going with the income tax proposals, and he figured that this is a way to grab 17% of the economy and turn it into an income redistribution program. Obviously, as Republicans, everyone up here is against that. But we do need to replace it with something because the cost of health care has been climbing in exponential fashion for the last 2 decades. I believe that we have to go to health savings accounts. When I was mayor, we implemented this for our employees, and we saved 25% in the first year. Now, when I say health savings accounts, I'm talking about across the board, including for Medicaid, those on welfare. Can you imagine, for the first time in their lives, and this could be intergenerational, for the first time in their lives, these folks would actually be concerned with the cost of their health care because at the end of the year, they could save whatever was left and use it. It would change the whole dimensional view of health care in the United States. That's what we have to do with a major medical component.
Thank you.
We need more than a minute for that question, but
I'm aware of this. We have to get as many questions as we can. You will have time for your closing statements, too, if there's anything that you feel you didn't say, and you'll revisit it then. But now we'll go to Calvin Turnquist.
It's true, Alan, that Obamacare has nothing to do with healthcare. If it did, it wouldn't have hired more IRS agents and physicians to implement it. So anything that mandates you and then taxes you if you don't comply, it's a tax, not healthcare. It does not address the rising costs of healthcare. My wife and I have been in the health and fitness industry for over 19 years. So we understand what healthcare is all about. When our colleagues are going without taking private insurances, there's a problem with it. So I say we repeal it and replace it with a market-driven solution, not government mandates. Thank you.
Okay, Nick Wilkerson.
Well, absolutely, Obamacare has problems. I've been speaking publicly at different small business associations about Obamacare for some time now. I've read the bill twice, unlike a lot of folks who actually voted on it. Yes, there's a lot of problems and taxes and loopholes and tax codes that send your head in circles. There's no doubt about it. It's a negative for our country. But really, it's about how do we move forward out of it. I mean, can you repeal it? Can you explode it? Can you throw it out the window? What can you do with it? At the end of the day, it's about understanding why so many Americans are so desperate for it, understanding the cost and the affordability of it and the accessibility of it, understanding what they're looking for, and coming together and actually finding a real solution that makes sense. Yes, across the state lines. HSAs will work, but we need to talk about that. They usually are associated with high deductible health plans, so that would be the negative side to health savings accounts. We need to understand how to deliver that overly the right way for everybody to understand the full picture. It's about coming together and putting together a real solution, moving forward away from Obamacare that everyone agrees with.
Okay, thank you. Carl Domino.
Roger, can you reread the question?
Sure. It says, at this point, what is the best way to handle Obamacare? Fix or full repeal, and then what?
I thought so, because none of the answers respond about the best way to handle it. We all got ideas about what to do. There's really only two ways to handle Obamacare. The one is we retain the House, we win the Senate, and 3 years from now we win the presidency. And then we can do it through effective legislation. But the other that I'm intrigued in is a lawsuit, Sissel versus Department of Health and Human Services. Article 1, Section 7 of the U.S. Constitution says that all revenue-raising bills will originate in the House of Representatives. Obamacare, the initial bill, was a tax benefit for military veterans. It was completely stripped in the Senate. It was not brought back to the House. The House never voted on this revenue-raising bill. The first thing I will do upon electing is join the 47 other representatives and sign onto the amicus brief to question the constitutional procedures by which Obamacare came into being. Thank you.
Okay, and finally, we'll hear from Ilya Katz.
Obamacare, it is a weapon of mass destruction. It's an attempt to enslave whole country. Why we have to nationalize factories and banks? We can nationalize people who say this are the beginning. So all my points you have in these cartoons, and also 3 years ago I published a book about Obamacare. I believe we can delegate management of Obamacare to doctors, proctologists. They do the same as government through the S, but at least they do this profession. And I believe we can avoid Democrats for Obamacare with free contraceptives to stop their propagation. Thank you.
Okay, next question. It says, if you had your druthers, who would you like to see as the 2016 Republican candidate for president? And we'll start with Alan Schlesinger.
Oh, that's a dangerous one. I happen to like several of the people running, and like you sitting in this room today, I'm going to sit back as you are, and I'm going to see, as hopefully as your U.S. representative, I'm going to see which one is best for our district. And that's the gentleman or woman that I'm going to support for the presidency.
Okay, Calvin Turnquist.
Would you repeat that question, please?
Who would you like to see as the 2016 Republican candidate for president?
Wow, that's a tough question. There's so many good candidates out there, but what I have to look and determine is which candidate is best suited to defeat Hillary Clinton in the general election. Similar like what we're doing here, which candidate is suited best to beat Patrick Murphy. Right now, there are a slew of candidates, but until they all announce, I cannot answer that question because I have no idea which one is going to be running for the nominee for the Republican Party. I cannot answer that question this time.
Okay, Nick Wilkerson.
True, it's hard to throw out a name right now. There's a lot of great names out there, and probably a lot of names we don't want to see run. But I think it's very important. It's who and what he or she offers, right? We need somebody, yes, that's obviously going to win the tickets, going to take the White House, but we want to know why and how they're going to do it. I don't want somebody to win it on emptiness, like I talk a lot about. I don't want, I don't want to repeat just because there's an R in front of the name doesn't mean that they're going to do something magical and great for all of us. I think it's really important to know what he or she's going to actually do for us. It's really important. I don't care if it's a Republican. I'll say it flat out. It's about the right person. Like I don't want to be the best candidate here. I want to be the right person, the right man that's here running for this seat, as well as I want to see the right man or woman in Washington at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. That's what I live for.
Okay, Carl Domino.
Well, thank you. Like everyone else, I'm not prepared to answer that, but let me tell you that I've met a lot of the candidates. I spent some time with Scott Walker a few months ago. I was very impressed with what he's done. I actually played golf with Rand Paul a few weeks ago. I served in the legislature with Marco Rubio. I served in the legislature when Jeb Bush was a governor, and they're all fine gentlemen. They come from different ways, but they're new names that are going to come in. Just to give you a hint of where I might go, let me tell you who I supported each of the last two times in the primaries. Last time Mitt Romney, the time before Rudy Giuliani.
yield your chance.
I believe that the best next president will be governor of Texas, Mr. Perry. He is not a great talker, he is not politician, but he is the best worker. He created 30% of all new jobs in the United States. And I met him a couple times. I will tell you, he has a backbone and he has an iron balls.
Okay, and Brian Lara.
It is early to tell, but I do have my favorites. In particular, I'm not going to take a pass on it. I like Cruz. I think he'd be a great candidate, particularly because he is standing up for the people. And he's standing up to the party. He's doing what he believes is correct for the country, not necessarily just for a party or for anyone else. So that's one of my preferences. Perry's also an interesting candidate. I don't think he's declared yet, or anyone's declared, it doesn't matter. But the best thing about it is that we will have a choice, and we'll have people to look at, and from there we will decide as a country.
Okay, thank you. Next question is, if you're selected as the Republican nominee, would you agree to a one-on-one debate with Congressman Murphy? And we'll start with Calvin Turner.
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Dick Wilkerson.
I crave it, absolutely crave it. And there's an opportunity here to expose somebody who is just writing legislation, looks great on paper, that has no hair on it whatsoever, it's not going to go anywhere, but looks great. It's great to campaign with, it's great to sit in front of crowds like yourselves and say, look how great I am, look at this, look what I did here, I crossed the aisle, but meanwhile, it really never was going to go anywhere. It's rhetoric, it's campaign rhetoric, and that's all he's doing. Yes, he's standing behind some great topics right now, the waterways, the flood insurance issues. That's great, but what can you really do with it? How are you going to do more? What's the bottom line, and what are you really showing with your efforts? Is it all talk, or are you actually doing something about it? Are you achieving any success with your words? That's what's important. I would hold him accountable to what he's achieved, but more importantly, what he has not achieved, because frankly, it's all hot air right now.
Okay, Carl Domino.
I was asked 2 weeks ago by the St. Lucie County Taxpayer Association to debate Patrick Murphy on the 15th of May, and I responded affirmatively within about 30 seconds. I don't know if Patrick's going to show up that night. I will debate him anytime, anywhere, as often as he wants to. I have some respect for Patrick Murphy. He's our congressman. I don't denigrate what he's attempted to do. But Patrick Murphy doesn't understand the values of this district. He moved up here 3 years ago, and he changed parties. And he has no core set of values to represent the citizens. I look forward eagerly to debating him.
Okay, here you counts.
I knew Ronald Reagan, and I worked for Ronald Reagan. As he said, don't be scared, be prepared. I'm perfectly prepared and equipped with all my life to take off crown from the head of political clown. It will be my great pleasure.
Brian Lara.
Absolutely. We'd love to debate Democrats and Republic. Look what the policies are. They say it's not what they do. And to be able to do that, to show that their policies and their rhetoric are complete opposites, it's exactly the way to win votes, exactly the way to educate the populace. So yes, absolutely, I would welcome talking with them.
And finally, from Ellen Schlesinger.
Make no mistake about it, Patrick Murphy is going to be a very difficult opponent this fall, and I'm ready to take him on, and we're going to debate. We're going to talk about some of these issues, why I will not let him run away from Obamacare. He has a few quotes that I especially enjoy, like the one where he says, I especially like the exchanges, which is helping people to get insurance. His other quote lately is, mend it, don't end it. I'd like to see how he's going to respond when we go through the facts of what Obamacare has done to people already and what it's going to do later in this decade, especially to those folks over 65. I want to see what kind of response he has with very specific questions to him on this specific topic, because I think this is going to be the issue of 2014. Also, I believe that it's going to be hard for him to run away from the socialist movement that is the Democratic Party right now. We're going to hit him with very specifics on that also, and I think it's going to make it very, very difficult and very uncomfortable for him. That's why I think we will prevail in November. It's going to be very difficult, and I'm going to need all your help.
Okay, I'll take a break here and see if anybody else has any questions they would like collected and brought up. Go ahead and raise your hand if you have some more questions. Okay, next one. This last summer, the Juno Beach Council passed a resolution in support of a national catastrophic fund. Why or why not would you support such a fund? And we'll start with Nick Wilkinson.
Well, I guess you got to look at a fund overall. I mean, it's by the nature of the fund itself, it's logical that we want to have something in place, obviously, to handle such a disaster. I think it's common sense. We definitely want that in place. But again, you got to look at what expenses that come. Is how are we providing that fund? As long as it is properly in place, as long as it's affordable, and as long as we can actually have a strong one in place. Again, I think it's a question that's pretty simple. There should be no opposition to a fund of such nature as long as it's a properly placed fund.
Thank Carl Dominic.
Thank you. When I served in the legislature, I had the unhappy moment of serving during two of the biggest hurricane seasons we had. And we did a lot of work on insurance. As you know, you buy your own insurance. We have Citizens, which is the policy of last resort. But a lot of people don't know we have a cat fund in this state. And I have long advocated publicly that any state that has a cat fund, the federal government ought to set up a cat fund that would match that amount. So if we had a $40 billion call in a cat fund, the feds ought to match us. If, on the other hand, we chose not to self-insure, because this is done through self-insurance, numbers aren't as big, then why should the federal government do your work? So for the state of Florida, which has been very vigorous in developing its cat fund as a backup with buying reinsurance, so we have the capabilities of underwriting insurance in the, when I left it was the $40 billion, I don't know what it is, area, then those states ought to have a matching federal fund, and I have been public in my support for that concept.
Okay, thank you. And next will be from Giga Katz.
A rich country with big debts is a poor country. And debtor is a slave or creditor. This is my base understanding. For sure, everybody needs fund for rainy day. I hope we never will need catastrophic fund. Everything will be okay. And we have catastrophic situation. It is called 17 trillions and a half debts. For each family, $150,000. Every parent wants children live better. What we did for our children.
Okay, Brian Lara.
I think the question was about having a rainy day fund in a local environment. And I think that's the way to go. The government should be close to the people, and if the people choose on the local level to create a fund for emergency situations, that's the right way to do it. They take responsibility for their own coverage. I also think that, as Dominic said, it should be encouraged at the federal level, not covered by fiat, but rather that if the local environment, local government chooses to create that, then yes, we should match it at the federal level to encourage the responsibility.
Okay, Alan Schlesinger.
I'd be against the catastrophic fund. I think it doesn't make any sense and it encourages risky behavior. I believe we have national flood insurance, which right now is $27 billion in debt, which is a big problem. And once again, the taxpayers are supposed to bail us out on that one. I don't think it's fair. I think those people that want to live in very dangerous situations have to pay up the cost for living. If you want to live on the beach, there's a cost for living on the beach. The expenses should be shared by those in that particular pool. Everything in the United States lately has been going that we are all in this together on every single thing, and I don't think it's fair that the taxpayers have to bail everybody out on everything. I don't think that's what the Republican Party stands for. That's certainly not what my principles are, and I would oppose any type of legislation like that.
Okay, and finally, Calvin Turnquist.
I would support the resolution for a catastrophic fund. For instance, how many of you here have Citizens insurance? If you have Citizens, you don't have insurance. Citizens has $65 million there? That wouldn't cover one house on Jupiter Island. Okay, so I would support that kind of stuff in fund, because if you have citizens, you're not covered. Thank you.
Okay, our next question asks, what is your position concerning gay marriage? And we'll start with Caldana.
I will admit my position is not the one that's going to prevail. I believe marriage should be between a man and a woman, but the clock moves, and that debate's pretty much over with. The younger generations did not agree with me on that. If there were a vote, I would vote that it should be between a man and a woman only, but I think I would lose that vote.
Ilya Katz.
Well, to tell you frankly, I don't care about gay marriage, same-sex marriage. My neighbor married with his motorcycle. He's all kinds of him. It's up to him. But one thing I want to make clear. Marriage, it is a word. It's our label. It's our, how to call, our brand. Our poet, composers, King Solomon, Petrarca, we made the songs for the lovely lady. It is a Bible. It is a union between woman and man. But if homosexuals want to marry it, well, if somebody wants to marry Mr. Murphy, I am not against this. It's up to them.
Okay, Brian Lara.
And so the question is about gay marriage, and I think it's more more geared toward gay rights per se. The word marriage is sort of two different issues. One of them is the holy matrimony. That's by the church. And the other one is the same word is being used by the state. But for the state purposes, it's not a holy enterprise. It's simply a union between two individuals who choose to sort of share a life. I believe that everyone should have the right to happiness and to pursue happiness. And if they want to join in such a union, then that's perfectly fine. But it's not the same as the religious ceremony with a man and a woman.
And Alan Schlesinger.
Well, Elia, I'm certainly not against Harley-Davidson marriages, so I want to make that clear. And I hope the best for our congressman in his love life as well as his future after Congress. But I have to tell you that this issue, among several other social issues, I believe, is really one of the problems that we have in the Republican Party, because we split over this, and it really hurts our chances in elections, unfortunately. And the kind of analogy I always give is like we're on the Titanic right now. And these social issues come up, and it's kind of like we're arguing over which deck chair we want to watch the crash with. You know, right now, we're heading towards the iceberg, ladies and gentlemen. We have to focus on what's important, which is that we have to move forward, and we have to get the country back on track economically. That's what's at stake. If we stay out of people's bedrooms, we're going to start winning issues. That's why I put forward that the Republican Party should stand for honest and efficient government. If we do that, we're going to do a great job, we're going to win elections.
Okay, Calvin Turnquist.
To be quite honest with you, this topic is not really about marriage. It's about rights under the Constitution. This is a civil revolution. And for us to sit here and discriminate against certain people because of their sexual orientation goes against everything. And we cannot sit here and be hypocrites. We talk about equal rights, we talk about First Amendment rights, but then we're going to discriminate against a set of people because of their sexual orientation. I think this word marriage was a conduit for them to be heard. I don't believe they really care about the word marriage. They just want to have the same rights as heterosexual couples. And if we give them the same rights under a civil union, we wouldn't have to worry about the word marriage when it comes to gay and lesbian couples.
Okay, and finally, Nick Wilkerson.
You know, there's really two sides of this. I mean, there's my personal views. I'm raised Catholic. I have my personal views, but there are my views on how government should be involved or not involved. And not just this issue, but a lot of other social issues. I think that's very important to distinguish the two there. My personal views as a Catholic are probably pretty clear. Like Carl says as well too, I believe it's between a man and woman. However, what I believe, how government should be involved, I also agree. I don't think it's government's role. I think government should treat everybody fairly regardless of race, gender, sexual orientation. I think it's not government's role to jump into the bedrooms and actually dictate who is with who. But I have my personal views, and I also have my views on how government should and should not be involved in personal lives and social issues. I also agree that if we want to find common ground in this country, it's not going to be fighting and arguing over social issues like this. It's about fiscal issues. Like Alan said, it's really important to make sure that we come and meet together because we're stronger together, and we can find that common ground on fiscal issues, not social ones.
Okay, the next question asks, what cuts would you make to balance the budget? And we'll start out with Ilya Katz.
Well, this is my favorite topic, but I need 15 minutes. Anyway, I'm for elimination all taxation for businesses, and it will bring back our opportunity, American exceptionalism. It will decrease unemployment, decrease debts. All money from whole world will be in America, work in America. This is not my idea. The great, our economist, conservative, laureate of Nobel Prize, Milton Friedman, already did this in Chile. Broken country by communist Allende. And General Pinochet, he has a character. Well, he died already. So he implemented ideas of Milton Friedman.
Thank you.
And country, one of the 10 best countries
Your time is
in the
up.
world.
Thank you.
I'm sorry.
That's okay. Brian Lara.
It's a huge budget. For one thing, they passed this thing on one huge bill. They don't even bother looking at it. It's almost like automatic. One thing that has to be done is we have to stop this automatic increases on all these programs. We have to have Congress responsible for the bills they pass and do so and know what they're passing, smaller bills and directly addressing different issues. We also need to get back to a more constitutional government. There are entire departments that perhaps shouldn't even exist. Education should not be run by the federal government. It should be run at local levels and by individual states or cities. The IRS is a huge monstrosity, and tax code should be vastly cleaned up and simplified. We're wasting a lot of money, both as individuals and also as a government, trying to go through all these loopholes and monstrosity.
Okay, Alan Schlesinger. I'm going to do something very novel. I'm going to give you specifics. What do you think of that? We're going to start with health savings accounts on health care. And as I said, we're going to do it across the board on Title 19 and on welfare. Secondly, we're going to audit all entitlements. What Obama did when he came into office is he said, come in for the free stuff. We're not even going to, you just sign your name, we're going to give it to you. Exact opposite of what happened with the Republican Congress and Clinton, which was we went towards workfare, do you remember that? And also making sure that people were on entitlements legitimately. So that's the second thing. Third thing, the federal workforce. You wouldn't believe what these folks are making now. You sitting in your chairs? $140,000 average salary and benefits that are over 50% of that cost. It's outrageous. No one in the private sector makes that kind of money. So the first thing we do is we cap all salaries at $150,000. Everyone else gets a 10% cut across the board. In addition to that, no pension over $50,000 a year. Any new hires for the federal government other than the military should be on a 401k like everyone else in the real world. No more federal pensions.
Thank you. Okay, we've got Calvin.
I've got more if I had time.
Calvin Turnquist.
Wow, cuts to balance the budget. Well, that would take an hour. But I think one place we can start is by repealing Obamacare and letting free markets do what it's supposed to do. Secondly, for small businesses, and this is a step towards balancing the budget, for all small businesses and those who own it, what I want to do is eliminate the capital gains tax for those who have small businesses with employees under 75 employees. Because why would you want to reinvest your profits into the market if capital gains tax is going to hit you so hard? I know this for a fact because when my wife and I sold our practice, we were ready to invest, but the IRS came knocking on our door. Capital gains tax hit us hard. So in the last 6 years, we have not started a small business for fear of capital gains taxes. And I know there are ways to protect small business owners, but that's where I would start by eliminating capital gains tax for companies with employees of less than 75.
Thank you. Nick Wilkerson.
A lot of these issues are important issues, but it's like putting Band-Aids on a broken arm right now. I mean, the broken arm is, the much larger number is actually what's seen through program assessments and the failing assessments of these programs. In 2007, we had $806 billion spent on programs that assessed under 35% to 0%. $116 billion was spent on 0% effective scores. Yes, capital gains, yes, these are great ideas, but I'm going for the big fish. Like I said, I want to fix the broken arm. What's realistic on day one is exposing this waste, exposing the abuse behind this waste, and going right for that broken bone, because guess what? Bringing transparency and fixing that broken bone is what America wants and what America needs, and that's what I'm going to do on day one.
Okay, and finally, Carl Domino.
I served 8 years in the state legislature. The state of Florida, like almost every other state union, has a balanced budget approach. We cannot spend money we can't make. And in the good times, we put money away for the bad times. In the bad times, we had to cut. There should be a federal constitutional amendment for a balanced budget except in time of war or national emergency. Secondly, we need to transition, because money's being wasted every day. The Obamas on their last vacation spent something like $7 million. And I don't mind them taking a vacation, but $7 million would buy a lot of frequent flyer miles. We need to go from baseline budgeting to zero-based budgeting. And one thing that most people don't know is, for 4 years in a row, the U.S. Senate never took up a budget. They never met their responsibilities. And when they don't do that, it's automatically a baseline budget. In other words, whatever you spent last year, you spent a little bit more this year. So you never even had an opportunity to vote on cuts. We've got to follow the Constitution, which says Congress shall do a budget every year.
Okay, thank you. I'd like to follow up with a question of my own which relates to that, which has been rather contentious in Washington, and that is, what is your position on raising the debt ceiling? And I'll start with Brian Lara.
What ceiling? There is no debt ceiling. Every time they go up to reach the ceiling, they raise it. There is no ceiling. The last time that it gets passed, which was, I guess, expiring now, they didn't even bother putting a number on it. It was a blank check. And this is how our Congress is behaving. This is not their money, it's our money. And they take it from us through force, through taxation. But they also spend it willingly for any reason at all. There is no debt ceiling. I believe that there should be one, and I believe that the way to do that is to hold them accountable for the bills they're passing. You can't have them pass one big bill and then do fear-mongering, the whole world's going to end. It doesn't end. Whenever the federal government stops working, things actually are still just fine. So we don't really need all these programs and all these things that the government is trying to force upon us.
Alan Schlesinger.
You know, seriously, we've got to use every weapon in our arsenal as Republicans in Congress to stop this move towards socialism. As Maggie Thatcher said, socialism works until you run out of other people's money. Well, right now, we can amend that, say, until you run out of other people's money and the printing press stops printing funny money, which is what's happening right now. For those of you who don't know what's going on, we're up to now $4 trillion of quantitative easing, which is basically printing money that doesn't exist, that normally goes into the private sector, is just being printed now to pay our debt. $4 trillion out of $17.5 trillion of the federal debt. So yes, I would use the debt ceiling as a weapon in our arsenal, but of course it's almost meaningless because you have to get at the bottom line. And the 800-pound gorilla in the room, ladies and gentlemen, is the entitlements. And until we start restructuring Medicare, which again I'm making some offers on what we can do logically, until you start moving on Social Security, none of this is going to work. It is unsustainable. And when the dollar cracks, we're all going to crack with it.
All right, Calvin Jones.
I would vote against raising the debt ceiling limits. How many of us can max out our credit cards, call our creditors, and say we want an increase? It won't happen. We should live within our limits, spend what we earn, put away some for rainy days, and not live outside of our spending limits. Some of us who, what my wife says, we earn best salary, we want to live a champagne lifestyle. You can't do that. So I would vote to not increase the debt ceiling limit, live within our means, and thank you.
And Nick Wilkerson.
Yeah, of course I wouldn't vote for raise the debt ceiling. I think it's really important though to understand that a lot of folks don't even understand what debt ceiling is. I'm sure most of us in this room do, where folks come to events like this, where the average person at home really doesn't understand it. Yeah, the credit card analogy is a great analogy, but we need to explain to the folks that what they're doing in these government shutdowns is really kind of shutting down effective programs that we're going to feel at home. It's like holding us hostage. I agree with that word being used because it's like saying, hey, you're going to lose these programs unless you give us more money and support this debt ceiling being raised. When in reality, we have so much more that I do keep on hitting towards all this money. I mentioned $806 billion in 1 year alone. If we can actually point, educate, and help folks understand, this is where the money is. Let's address this money. $220 billion spent every year on data processing centers that we don't even use right now. The last shutdown was over $60-something billion. Imagine someone like myself standing in front of the camera saying, why not address the $220 billion instead of the $60+ billion? Isn't that more logical? Guess what? The average person at home will agree with that.
Carl Domino.
I think President Obama said it well when he's U.S. Senator and he voted against the Bush increase in the debt ceiling. He said, the need to increase the debt ceiling reflects a failure of presidential leadership. Patrick Murphy on the debt issue and so many others has abdicated away from the checks and balances and separation of powers. I think he's given a blank check to the administration, spend whatever you would spend. Historically, when there's been votes on raising the debt ceiling, it's been part of a process by which you've got other things that you want. This president just says we'll take it or leave it. We have $17 trillion of debt in the lowest interest rate environment we've had in 40 years. Every 1% more that we have to pay in the debt is another $170 billion, which is roughly 5% of what we spend in the government every year. Your grandchildren will be paying for that, and we cannot let it get out of control because eventually, with the money that's being printed, interest rates will be far higher than they are today.
Thank you. Emilia Katz.
Well, if our country will be again country of opportunity, not country of opportunists, if it will be country again, country of makers, not country of takers, you know what, we will not worry about that ceiling, because only sky will be ceiling for free country, from kingdom of freedom. I came from world of serfdom to world of freedom, and I don't want that world of the serfdom will come to America. Obama promised fundamentally transform our country. So that means he already put a straitjacket, 16,000 regulation for 4 years on our opportunity.
Thank you. We wanted to wrap this up at 8:30, and I know some people have some things they have to get to afterwards, so in order to allow time for the closing statements, this will have to be the last question. What is most at stake for young people in this election, and how is that stake positioned in your platform? And we'll start with Alan Schlesinger.
I'm running for the next generation because right now they're getting the short end of the stick. I really think it is incredibly unfair of what we're doing to people that are under 30 years old. Basically, we have spent their money already and are into their children's future in our spending. That's how outrageous it is. And again, as I said before, it's unsustainable. It is our job to be responsible in this country, and we have to explain it to our neighbors that it's not fair of what we're doing to the children. And it's easy when you can print money and everything goes well, and right now the stock market's up because of what they're pumping into the economy. I call it economic heroin, and it works until it collapses. I went to the Wharton School of Finance, and I've studied economic history all my life. And what we're developing here is extremely dangerous, and I'm really worried about what's going to happen. It's not a question of if we're going to collapse, it's a question of when we're going to collapse. And to leave that on the next generation, that type of a burden, is just unconscionable. And that's why, to be honest with you, I need this job like I need a hole in my head. But that's the reason why I want to go to Congress and solve this before it's too late.
Calvin Turnquist.
What's most at stake for our next generation is their debt. The debt that they're going to accumulate by going to college, universities. I'm 45. I'm still paying back my student loans. The interest I'm accumulating is ridiculous. So imagine what it's going to be like when kids here go to college and universities. I went to the University of Miami. The tuition, let me gauge myself again. The tuition 19 years ago was $32,000 a year. I don't know what it is now. I'm afraid to look. So for our kids to be able to afford, and our parents to be able to afford tuition for these kids, yeah, it's going to be a lot. And guess what? The opportunities for them, I hope they're there. Otherwise, they're coming back home. 25, 26-year-olds living at home with their parents, can't afford to pay the tuition, the loans back. So this is why I'm working, this is why I'm here, and I want to assure them that when I'm congressman, I will do everything I can to ensure their future.
Nick Wilkerson.
They're right in that runaway train of fiscal abuse right now that we see in Washington. It's being steered by both the folks on the left and right side of the aisle. Definitely will affect future generations for the better. That's definitely something myself and my plan will do. But it's also understanding things like Common Core right now. We talked about Obamacare a lot tonight. Common Core is no different. It's an Obamacare version of education. It's something I spend a lot of time on. I sit on SAC committees in the county and at school level too with a lot of different principals in the area. Y'all think FCAT was bad in some ways. Wait till you see Common Core and how ugly that's getting right now. New York State just tested it. Only 30% of the kids in the better schools, of course, your Common Core, you're going to put into better schools. Only 30% of the kids were deemed proficient. A lot of teachers were asking how to handle a test that had vomit on them because the kids were so scared of taking these tests. And these are the tests that they're pushing down our throat right now without the state actually approving it yet. So there are issues that are really important that need to be addressed for our future generations. I have an 8-month-old daughter named Reagan and a 9-year-old son named Jack. I'm very involved and very concerned about it.
Thank you. Carl Domino.
Thank you. I mentioned a few questions ago the enormous debt, and as interest rates go up, how it will suck in all the government spending and only can be met by tax increases. But let me tell you about something that's even more disturbing. Who's buying our debt today? The Federal Reserve, a few Americans, the Chinese, and the Japanese. We are the strongest country in the world for two reasons. We have the best military, and we have the reserve currency. All oil that's transacted is transacted American dollars. If our dollar weakens significantly because of our outstanding debt, we lose the reserve currency position. The Chinese and Japanese are not going to want our debt at 2 or 3%. They're going at 8 or 10%. And then you're going to have just an escalation that never ends. We must get the debt under control. Patrick Murphy has voted for every increase and every budget-busting expenditure out there. We've got to explain to the voters that there will be a price to be paid.
Thank you. Ilya Katz.
I came to country, the best country of freedom, free country. After 38 years, I found myself in country of free spenders. I believe our young generation, with a lot of debts on their head, will do only one thing. They will pee on our graves, and we deserve this, because we did not stay tall, we did not fight for freedom, we waited what Washington will give us. Therefore, if our economy will flourish, the same will be situation with youngsters. Remember, Kennedy, Reagan decreased taxes and got more revenue. Let's take these lessons. Jefferson said,
Thank you.
to bed.
You can do that in your closing statement.
I agree with what you said.
Okay, Brian Lara.
So what's at stake for our younger generation? Well, it's very similar to what's at stake for us. It's the very freedom that in the country that we live in. Right now, the IRS and other groups in the government are attacking freedom of speech. Anyone who disagrees with the status quo is subpoenaed or audited. We're losing a lot. We're losing a lot of freedoms. For the young generations, this debt is unsurmountable. Right now, with quantitative easing, keeping rates low. The minute that stops, and it has to stop because if the rate is going unsustainable, rates will go up. That's probably the reason why rates are low right now, and it's probably the reason why we get no money on our bank accounts. Healthcare's been taken over already, and jobs are hard to find. American students are coming out of college, and they have no prospects for getting employment. And as the years pass, this gets worse and worse. There's many years that they could have been working, and instead they're just losing all the chance for experience. And the last of inflation is going to kill us once the debt burden kicks in.
Okay, this concludes our question period, and the candidates will now each have 2 minutes to make their closing statements according to the drawing that we had earlier. And so the first closing statement will be from Nick Wilkerson.
Thank you. I do appreciate, again, this opportunity tonight. I wish I had more time, and hope we can speak after if you have more questions. You know, it comes a time when we have to stop chasing our tail. And what I mean by that is we're looking at candidates on both sides of the aisle for years now, all promising big things and promising hope and change, and look where that's got us. Neither side of the aisle has really stepped up and done anything better for our country and our community. They've only made things worse. At what point do we stop and look at everybody and hold everybody accountable that should be held accountable? I don't care if it's someone talking about who's affecting our waterways. I don't care if it's who's standing in front of the flood insurance and who's put it in the hands of FEMA that caused this nightmare. You know, I don't care if it's about Common Core. It comes down to when do we stop and actually start holding people accountable? That's what I'm passionate about. We talked about principles earlier. That's what drives me. Without them, I'm not here tonight. I'm not here tonight. I know I can do this job, and I will do it loud, and I will do it proud, and I will do it in front of every TV camera and every microphone and hold everybody accountable to what they promised and every dollar we give them. Again, my plan, it literally follows the dollar through the system. Who gets it? Who spends it? Who earmarks it? It also ties in and associates their special interest groups and PACs that might be potentially affecting that spending, right? And then it follows, where does it go to? What group gets it? How effective are they with that money? Every year, because guess what? The government's accountable to us. We're not accountable to them. We need to all come together and start holding them accountable. My plan does that. It forces it, because guess what? We can't expect any of these congressmen or women who are promising to be accountable to do it on their own. We've been doing that for years now, trusting them. It ain't going to happen. We have to force their hand and hold their feet to the fire and make sure that they're accountable to us and the hard-earned tax dollars we give them to invest in our behalf. That's what I'll do. My name is Nick Wilkerson. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Our closing statement will next be from Alan Schlesinger.
Again, thank you all for coming, and I hope we didn't bore you too much. But I have to tell you that I look forward to a government that works for the people, not the people working to sustain the government. I look forward to a government where we don't turn our backs on our friends internationally and we kiss up to our enemies, and then we think that they're going to be our friends until they stick a knife in our back, as we're seeing unfold today in the Ukraine as well as in the Middle East. I'm for a government that stands there for you, the people. I've had the honor of serving the people for 9 terms on the local and state level. I ran for the United States Senate. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to attain that. Never dreamt I'd get back into politics again. But like you, I am so concerned with our future and our children's future that I thought I was mandated to give this a shot, to try to take back this district and take back our country. Together, I believe that there is a better future for all of us, especially our children. And I think that we can do this. But we have to be very specific. And we have to outline that these are not simple answers, that everything we're going to be doing is going to be difficult, and everyone has to give a little. Like we discussed here tonight, it's not fair that we run the country unsustainably for the future. It's not fair to us, and it's not fair to the next generation and the generation thereafter, because there will be a collapse of our economy, and no one wants to have to live through it. And those of you that are old enough to remember what happened the last time the economy collapsed, we ended up with a dictator in Germany and a worldwide conflagration. I'm sure no one here wants to see that. We see the roots of that developing, the seeds being planted today for just that type of a scenario. And the United States, instead of being stronger and being able to thwart any type of that situation like that, we are weakened, and unfortunately we don't have that kind of a future to depend on. That's why I hope I have the honor of representing the 18th District next year, and I want to be the best darn congressman you've ever had. Thank you.
All right, thank you. A closing statement from Carl Domino.
Well, thank you. I'm going to campaign on the things we're going to do, but I'm also going to campaign on the things we did, because everyone makes promises, only Domino delivers. I talked about the biggest tax cut we had in the history of the state of Florida with portability. There's over 1,000 jobs right up the road of high-paying jobs when we fought to bring the life sciences complex of Scripps and Max Planck to this county. And I was the only state legislator, in fact, the only state official that fought our cylinder, which was digital domain. And had I won that battle, the taxpayers would have saved over $100 million. You know, I like to read, I like to think, and I like to learn. So 3 years ago, I actually re-enrolled in law school. And on May 10th, I will be a graduate. My 14-year-old kids are going to watch me in a cap and gown walking the aisle. And I mention it for this reason. I've had two great honors in life. One was to serve for 20 years in the uniform of the United States Navy. And the other was to represent you for 8 years in the Florida State House. And before doing each of those, I raised my hand, I took the oath of office, I pledged to support and uphold the Constitution of the United States. And the last 3 years in law school, and meeting people like Anton Scalia and Alito, have allowed me to understand even more how important it is that we adhere to constitutional principles. Without separation of powers, we will have tyranny. Every country in the world has a constitution. They all have a Bill of Rights. Our separation of powers is what makes us different. And if we don't have congressmen that understand that, if we have congressmen like Patrick Murphy that abdicates his role, hands a blank check to Barack Obama, Nancy Pelosi, and Harry Reid, we will have tyranny in this country. I will fight that as I did in 24 and as I did for you in the state legislature.
Thank you. A closing statement now from Ilya Katz.
I'm running not only for office, I'm running to be heard and taken seriously. I'm 78 years young. Very soon I will see God and must report what I did with my life to end of my life. I'm on the mission. It's more important. And I will do my best to defend what I believe. We are my brother and sister called to be free. Bible. This is my motto. Man did not born with saddle on his back, but free by grace of God. Jefferson, I still got him. So this is my mantra, and we supposed to take off gloves and fight against multiculturalism, against political correctness. Too bad our party staying not behind certain ideas, but behind certain people. If you will send me to Congress, you will send asteroid to Washington. And you understand, asteroid can good method of the good cleaning. I will do my best. Oh, I have more time. And well, I will yield my time to the next person.
Okay, well, still for 2 minutes we have Brian Lara.
Hi all, thank you for coming here today and for staying the whole evening. You know, we have in front of you several candidates. You can tell most of our politics are not extremely different from each other, and that's for a good reason, because we're Republicans here. But to some degree, we need to sort of make a change to the establishment, because what we have in Congress, what we have in Washington, is basically the good old boy network, or whatever, the big party network. And we need to have citizens stand up, not just here, not just in one district, but all over the country. And we need to get involved and make sure that instead of having representation by an elite few, that we have government of the people, by the people, and for the people. Okay? My name is Brian Lara. Thank you for coming here today.
Okay, and our final closing statement will be from Calvin Turnquist.
Thank you all for coming tonight and spending time with us to compare and contrast the candidates up here. I came to America 25 years ago because America is that beacon on the hill that draws people for one good reason. They want a better future, a better life for themselves. And that's why I came here 25 years ago. And I'm proud to say that I am living the American dream. I have worked for everything that I have. And I'm proud to say that I was elected by my city to serve them on the city council locally. And I've proudly done this for 3 terms. And I resigned myself last year when I ran, for 2 years ago when I ran for the State House, because I wanted to take what I've learned, take what I've done to a higher level. And this is why I'm here today. With all due respects to the candidates up here, there are 3 of us who serve as elected officials. And we serve proudly. One would ask, why would I not serve this country in the military? That's simple. I ask too many questions. I am best served, I'm best used to serve this country in a position where I know I can impact people in a more tangible, positive way. And that's impacting them on a local level and taking this discipline to Congress. And I'm not going to sit here and bash our elected officials in Congress, because we're all trying to go up there and work with them. So why would I bash my colleagues? I will never do that. Someone say that one man can't make a change, but one man can start a movement to work towards that change. I cannot do it by myself. I'm a Christian. Moses needed help. Jesus had 12 disciples. So who am I but a lesser man to think that I can do this by myself? I need your help. I need all of your help. And together, we can start that movement to change the image of what Washington is, to bring back responsible government to the people, represent our issues in Washington, not Washington issues down here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And I would like to thank all the candidates for their participation and the Juno Civic Association for sponsoring this forum. And I'd like to thank all of you for coming. Now, this race will be on the August 26th ballot. It's a little ways off, but don't forget about it. I urge everyone to exercise their right to vote, and thank you, and good evening.